I never imagined that the wedding I'd been planning for years would unravel into a nightmare. 2 months before my wedding, I walked into my bedroom expecting the usual quiet of a routine morning, and instead, I caught my fiancée, Elise, entwined in a passionate embrace with my own brother, David. In that frozen moment, my heart hammered against my ribs and my mind went blank. Every detail remains seared into my memory, the shock in my eyes, the whispered apologies that died in the thick silence, and the cold realization that the people I trusted most had betrayed me. I had given them both the keys to my heart, and in an instant, they shattered every piece of trust I'd ever built. Before that day, everything had seemed perfect. Elise and I had met in college, a chance encounter that quickly blossomed into what I thought was the kind of love that would last a lifetime. I was planning a modest wedding that promised to honor our bond, a celebration of two souls destined to be together. David and I had been inseparable since childhood, our bond forged over years of shared secrets, laughter, and even the occasional petty argument that only brothers can have. That is why the betrayal cut so deeply. It wasn't just an affair, it was the collision of two pillars in my life. The devastation was overwhelming, leaving me questioning not only my judgment, but the very nature of love and loyalty. In the days after the discovery, I cycled relentlessly between blinding anger and crushing despair. I confronted them in the dim light of our shared past, but their feeble apologies and hollow expressions of regret only deepened my pain. Elise's tearful mutterings of remorse and David's dismissive shrug both betrayed a cold indifference that made me feel smaller than I ever thought possible. That night, sleep eluded me as I sat alone in the dark, replaying the moment again and again in my head. Each replay was a brutal reminder of how quickly the life I'd envisioned was crumbling into dust. I realized then that forgiveness wasn't an option, not for what they'd done, and certainly not for the part of me that had been so ruthlessly deceived. As the initial shock faded, a steely resolve began to take root. I couldn't, and wouldn't, be the victim in this twisted narrative. I decided that if betrayal was their chosen currency, then revenge would be the only transaction I was willing to make. I spent endless hours poring over emails, text messages, and every scrap of evidence that could prove the depth of their deception. I meticulously documented every secret phone call and every unexplained absence, compiling a dossier that transformed raw hurt into cold, hard proof. With every piece of evidence I unearthed, the plan for my revenge grew clearer. I wasn't driven solely by a desire to hurt them back. I needed to reclaim my identity, to prove to myself and to the world that I was not defined by their treachery. The turning point came when I discovered a series of incriminating emails between Elise and David. Their correspondence wasn't a spur-of-the-moment dalliance. It was a calculated exchange that revealed months of planning, plotting, and betrayal. They discussed their illicit meetings with chilling detachment, even scheming about how to exploit my wedding day for their own selfish gain. Reading their words, I felt a cold fury rising inside me, a fury that would not be quenched by tears or empty apologies. I knew that to silence the echoes of betrayal, I had to expose their darkest secrets to the light of day. I began to map out every detail of my plan with the precision of a military strategist. I chose a trusted journalist known for uncovering corruption and scandal. Over weeks, I encrypted and anonymized every file until not a trace of my identity remained. I arranged for private investigators to shadow Elise's every move and to corroborate the timeline I had painstakingly assembled. Every step of the plan was designed to leave no room for escape or revisionism. The files, the recordings, the damning emails, all were weapons in my arsenal. I wasn't out for mere public shaming. I was out to dismantle the carefully constructed facade that Elise and David had maintained for so long. The day the article went live is etched in my memory with brutal clarity. I remember sitting in my car, parked at a safe distance, and watching as the headlines exploded across every local news outlet. The article detailed the scandal in stark, unflinching language, a narrative that left no doubt about the depth of their betrayal. As the story spread like wildfire, the public turned against them with a fury I hadn't anticipated. Elise's reputation was tarnished beyond repair, and David, once revered as a loyal brother, was reduced to a pariah overnight. The backlash was swift and merciless. Friends, neighbors, and even distant relatives distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the disgrace that now defined their family. Yet the universe had one more cruel twist in store. In the aftermath of the scandal, Elise discovered she was pregnant with David's child. The irony was as bitter as it was inescapable. My own blood had conspired with the woman I loved to create a life that was now a living reminder of their betrayal. My parents, in their unwavering idealism, insisted that I support Elise for the sake of the innocent life growing inside her. They argued that a child was never at fault for the sins of its parents, and that family was a bond that could not be severed by mere betrayal. Their pleas, however, rang hollow in my ears. Supporting Elise meant condoning the very act that had shattered my life. I refused to be drawn into their delusional notion of familial duty when it came at the expense of my own dignity. I remember one bitter evening when, during a family dinner that felt more like an interrogation, my parents tried to convince me that Elise was still their daughter-in-law in spirit, deserving of love and support. Their voices were gentle, their eyes full of pity, but every word felt like a fresh wound. I told them plainly that my life was not theirs to repair and that my loyalty was to the truth, not to an illusion of unity built on deceit. The conversation ended in silence, but the damage was done. I had drawn an unyielding line, a boundary that no amount of parental pressure could cross. I would not sacrifice myself to atone for the sins of those who had so carelessly dismantled my life. In the weeks that followed, I withdrew from everyone and everything that reminded me of what I had lost. I avoided social gatherings, distanced myself from mutual friends, and immersed myself in work and solitary walks that gave me time to reflect on the ruins of my former life. The solitude was both a curse and a blessing, a constant reminder of the betrayal, yet also the space I needed to forge a new path. With every step I took, the resolve in my heart only hardened. I would not let their treachery define me. Instead, I channeled that pain into a fire that burned away the remnants of my naivety, leaving behind a tempered determination that nothing would ever break me again. The night I finally pressed send on that encrypted email to the journalist was a turning point. I sat alone in my study, the only light coming from the glow of my computer screen, and with trembling fingers, I transmitted the files that would expose Elise and David for who they truly were. In that instant, I felt both an immense weight lift from my shoulders and a deeper, colder emptiness settle in. It was a moment of liberation, yet also the final severance of a bond that had once defined my life. I knew there was no turning back. The path I had chosen was irrevocable, and I would see it through, no matter the cost. The fallout was immediate and unforgiving. Within days, news of the scandal had consumed every corner of our small town. Public opinion was a raging inferno, and every whispered conversation, every condemning glance, reaffirmed that justice was being served. I watched from a distance as Elise's carefully constructed life disintegrated before my eyes. Former friends turned their backs, and even those who had once offered support now seemed to recoil from the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. David, unable to withstand the overwhelming tide of public outrage, disappeared from view, his absence as complete as if he had never existed. I later learned that he had fled, leaving behind a legacy of shame and regret that no one could clean up. In the midst of the chaos, I began to document every new development. I recorded phone conversations where Elise tried to defend her actions, noting how her voice would waver before turning cold and detached. I gathered statements from acquaintances who had observed her secret meetings and compiled a timeline that left no doubt about the premeditation of her affair. Every piece of evidence was a nail in the coffin of the facade they had so meticulously built. I wasn't driven by a desire to see them suffer for suffering's sake. I wanted the world to know the truth. I needed every shred of deception to be laid bare so that no one would ever again mistake my pain for weakness. I even sought out a close friend, a person who had once been privy to the undercurrents of my life, to meet in a crowded, inconspicuous cafe. Over bitter cups of coffee, I recounted every detail, every moment that had led to my irrevocable decision to expose them. My friend's eyes widened in disbelief as I described the cold calculations hidden behind Elise's apologies and the indifferent shrug that had been David's only response. He warned me that the path I was on might lead to unforeseen consequences, that the pursuit of such unyielding justice might consume me from within. But even as his words echoed in my mind, I knew that compromise was not an option. I had reached a point where every ounce of betrayal demanded an equal measure of retribution. The day I saw the published article, I felt a grim satisfaction mixed with a hollow sorrow. I was standing in the parking lot of a local shopping center when I checked my phone, and there it was, headline after headline exposing the scandal in stark, unrelenting detail. The community's reaction was instantaneous and severe. People I had once trusted now whispered behind my back, and yet, strangers sent messages of support, congratulating me on my bravery. In that moment, I understood that by holding them accountable, I had not only reclaimed my narrative, but also ignited a spark of justice in the hearts of others who had been silenced by betrayal. The universe, however, was not done with its cruel twists. Soon after the article's release, Elise's secret became even more complicated when she discovered she was pregnant with David's child. The revelation sent shockwaves through our already fractured family. My parents, clinging desperately to the idea that blood was thicker than betrayal, insisted that I support her during this ordeal. They argued that a child was innocent, undeserving of the fallout from its parents' sins, and that my duty was to uphold family unity at all costs. Their pleas were not based on compassion, but on a misguided sense of loyalty that ignored the raw truth of my suffering. I told them, as plainly as I could, that I would never be a crutch for the consequences of their reckless choices. In the aftermath of the scandal, I tried to rebuild my life piece by piece. I immersed myself in work, rediscovering old passions and forging new paths that allowed me to channel the turbulent emotions swirling inside me. Art and writing became my refuge, a means of converting my agony into something tangible, a declaration that, despite the betrayal, I was still here, still fighting. My creative work began to draw attention from others who had suffered similar betrayals, and in that community of wounded souls, I found an unexpected solidarity. Every story shared, every empathetic nod, reinforced my belief that justice, though often painful, was the only way to reclaim one's identity after trust had been shattered. Yet, even as I found solace in my work, I was haunted by memories of that fateful day. In quiet moments, when the world around me had fallen silent, the faces of Elise and David would reappear in my mind, reminding me of the fragility of trust and the cruelty of betrayal. I refused to allow those memories to control me, though. I transformed them into a relentless drive for accountability. Every time a painful memory threatened to overwhelm me, I revisited the files, the recordings, the emails, each a testament to the cold truth that had set me free. One evening, as I sat alone in a dimly lit diner far from home, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a window. In that reflection, I saw not the broken man who had once wept in the darkness, but a person forged anew in the fires of retribution. I knew that true strength wasn't measured by the ability to forgive, but by the courage to stand tall in the aftermath of betrayal. I silently vowed that no matter how enticing the idea of reconciliation might seem to others, I would never allow myself to be vulnerable again to those who had shattered my world. In time, the shock of public humiliation faded from the headlines, replaced by a hushed murmur of gossip and regret. David, whose arrogance had once been his hallmark, disappeared into obscurity, his reputation obliterated by the scandal he'd helped create. Elise, on the other hand, struggled to rebuild a life from the wreckage of her choices. Isolated and ostracized by the very community that had once admired her, she became a cautionary tale, a living reminder that some betrayals are so deep they leave no room for redemption. I have spent years since then piecing together my shattered identity. I turned my back on family dinners filled with pitying looks and empty reassurances, and instead forged a future that was unequivocally my own. I focused on my work, on the relationships that were built on mutual respect and trust rather than obligation. I mentored those who had been hurt by betrayal, offering them a quiet strength born of my own experiences. I learned to trust again, but only in measured, deliberate doses, never allowing my heart to be so open that it could be shattered once more. There are still nights when I lie awake, the silence of my apartment filled with the echoes of memories too painful to forget. In those moments, I remind myself that every scar is a badge of honor, a testament to my survival and my refusal to be defined by the betrayals of others. I no longer yearn for forgiveness or reconciliation. I have embraced a life where the only justice that matters is the one I exact upon those who thought they could break me. I have chosen to let my actions speak for themselves, to show the world that betrayal is met not with tears, but with an unwavering resolve to rise above it. Now, as I walk the path of my reconstructed life, I do so with a quiet, unyielding confidence. I have reclaimed my narrative, piece by painstaking piece, and in doing so, I have discovered that true revenge is not a momentary burst of anger. It is a lifetime of living in defiance of those who tried to control your destiny. I refuse to be their martyr or their punching bag. I am the author of my own story, and every day I write a new chapter of resilience, determination, and unassailable truth. My journey from the depths of betrayal to the heights of self-empowerment is a reminder that while the wounds of betrayal may never fully heal, they can transform us into stronger, more determined individuals. I will never forgive Elise and David, not because I harbor a desire for endless retribution, but because forgiveness in their case would mean surrendering the hard-fought power I reclaimed when I exposed their deceit. I have learned that some actions are so unforgivable that the only true response is to live a life defined by justice, strength, and an unwavering commitment to one's own worth. Even now, as I reflect on those dark months that once threatened to consume me, I stand resolute. I have turned betrayal into a weapon against those who sought to destroy my life, and in that transformation, I found a power I never knew existed. My scars, my memories, and every act of retribution form the mosaic of a life rebuilt on my own terms, a life where the only allegiance is to the truth and to the strength that rises from its depths. I share this story not to seek pity or to glorify revenge, but to remind anyone who has ever been betrayed that you are not defined by the actions of those who hurt you. Stand tall, fight back, and know that true justice lies not in forgiveness, but in the relentless pursuit of reclaiming your life. My story is a testament to that truth, a chronicle of how I turned my darkest moment into the catalyst for a future that is unequivocally mine. Looking ahead, I remain ever vigilant, knowing that the journey of self-reclamation is never truly complete. But with each passing day, I build on the foundation of the hard-won lessons that betrayal taught me. I have learned to honor the pain without letting it control me, to acknowledge my past without being imprisoned by it. I have chosen to live with purpose, to let every breath remind me that even in the wake of unspeakable betrayal, I can forge a life defined by resilience, truth, and an unwavering commitment to my own worth. I will never allow the ghosts of yesterday to dictate the promise of tomorrow. Instead, I choose to walk forward with the strength of a man who has faced the abyss and emerged unbroken, a testament to the enduring power of self-determination. This is my truth, raw and unfiltered, a reminder that while betrayal may scar us, it can never extinguish the fire that burns within when we choose to reclaim our lives on our own terms. And so, I continue each day with a quiet confidence and an unyielding resolve to never again be made a victim of betrayal. I have transformed my pain into a force for justice and a legacy of strength, a legacy that, no matter how dark the past may have been, shines as a beacon of hope for anyone who dares to rise above it.